The day had started like any other, full of meetings and emails, but by noon, a chain of events led me to an unexpected early return home. My last meeting got cancelled, and a colleague offered me a ride to the airport. Before I knew it, I was boarding a flight back to New York, thinking how much of a surprise my early arrival would be for Jessica. After all, I had promised her I'd be back the next day, but tonight, she'd be the one surprised. I imagined her reaction in vivid detail. She'd smile when she heard my keys in the door, a glass of wine already in her hand, maybe some music playing softly in the background. I even entertained the thought of picking up flowers on the way from the airport, just to add to the surprise. I hadn't called ahead, I wanted it to be perfect. But nothing could have prepared me for what I was about to walk into. I turned the key in the front door and stepped inside. The apartment was quiet, darker than usual. I checked the clock, 10:45 p.m., not too late. Jessica had likely gone to bed, thinking she had the night to herself. That thought made me smile. I set my bags down by the door and silently made my way upstairs to our bedroom, feeling a thrill at the idea of waking her up with a kiss. As I reached the bedroom door, I noticed something odd, muffled voices, barely audible through the door. I frowned, my hand resting on the doorknob. For a moment, I thought maybe she was watching TV or talking on the phone. But the sound wasn't right. I pressed my ear to the door, my heart suddenly pounding in my chest. Laughter. A man's voice. I twisted the doorknob slowly, careful not to make a sound, and pushed the door open just enough to peer inside. And there they were, Jessica and Mark. Tangled in our sheets. My Jessica, my wife of 8 years, wrapped around him like he was the only thing in the world that mattered. I didn't say a word. I couldn't. My breath caught in my throat, my body frozen in place. Mark's hand traced down her back, his lips pressed against her neck. She sighed softly, a sound I had heard 1,000 times before, but now, it felt like a dagger in my chest. My pulse thudded in my ears, drowning out everything but the sheer weight of the betrayal unfolding in front of me. I could have stormed in right then. I could have yelled, screamed, torn them apart, demanded answers. But instead, I stood there in the shadows, hidden by the half-open door, watching. I don't know how long I stood there, but time felt warped, like it wasn't real anymore. Finally, Jessica spoke, her voice low and filled with the same tenderness I once thought was meant only for me. "I wish we had more time," she whispered, tracing a finger down Mark's arm. Mark grinned, pulling her closer. "We'll find more time. David will be out of town again soon." I felt a sharp, cold anger settle deep in my gut. The way they talked about me, so casually, like I was an afterthought. I realized this wasn't the first time. It couldn't have been. Their ease with each other, the way they moved together, it was too natural, too familiar. My hands clenched into fists, my nails digging into my palms so hard I could feel the sting. But I didn't move. Not yet. I wanted to, but something kept me frozen in place. I didn't want to lose control. Not like this. They didn't deserve my anger, not now. Instead, I slowly stepped back, quietly closing the door behind me. My heart was pounding, my mind racing with 1,000 thoughts, but one thing became clear: this wasn't going to end here. Confronting them in a fit of rage wasn't enough. They didn't deserve a clean break. No, I was going to make Jessica regret this betrayal in a way that would haunt her forever. I walked down the stairs, my hands still trembling. I reached for my phone, not to call anyone, but to start the process of documenting this betrayal. Texts, receipts, anything I could gather. I needed to be strategic, not impulsive. But before I could fully gather my thoughts, I heard footsteps coming down the stairs. "David?" Jessica's voice floated through the hallway. I turned around, and there she was, wrapped in a robe, her hair tousled from the affair she had just finished. Her face lit up with surprise. "You're home early. I wasn't expecting you until tomorrow." I forced a smile, though every fiber of my being screamed to lash out. Yeah, last-minute change of plans. I thought I'd surprise you. She stepped closer, pressing her lips against mine in a kiss that now felt foreign. I'm so happy you're back. I missed you. I swallowed the bile rising in my throat, forcing myself to play the part. Missed you too. Her smile was sweet, genuine even, but I knew better now. She didn't love me. Not anymore. If she ever had. So, what were you doing before I got here? I asked casually, testing the waters. She hesitated for the briefest moment before answering. Just watching some TV. I couldn't sleep, a bold-faced lie. But I nodded, pretending to believe her. Well, let's get some rest then. I'm exhausted. She smiled again, this time with relief, and turned back toward the stairs. As I followed her, I glanced at my phone, already forming the foundation of my plan. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Revenge would come. The days following my discovery felt like an exercise in performance art. I had never been a great actor, but I was determined to master the role of the oblivious husband. Each morning, I awoke next to Jessica, her warm body curled against mine, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing inside me. I would roll over, feigning sleep until she stirred, putting on my best smile as she reached for my arm. Good morning, sleepyhead, she chirped one morning, her voice bright as sunlight streaming through the window. Morning, I replied, forcing my voice to match her cheer. Did you sleep well? Like a baby, she said, her eyes sparkling with a sincerity I now found unnerving. How about you? Just what I needed, I said, brushing her hair back from her face. It felt like a betrayal in itself, but I swallowed my discomfort and leaned in to kiss her forehead. What's on the agenda today? She smiled, her eyes flickering with excitement. I was thinking of finally starting that garden project we talked about. You know, fresh flowers for the kitchen. I nodded, mentally compartmentalizing the domestic bliss she was eager to maintain. Sounds great. I'll help you with that when I get home. As I left for work, I reminded myself to stay focused. I had more pressing matters to address than planting flowers. In my office, I became consumed with gathering evidence against Jessica and Mark. I started tracking their interactions, keeping notes on her suspicious behavior and the times she was out late or working on weekends. Every detail was meticulously logged, every text scrutinized. I even created a secret folder on my computer labeled Project Phoenix, a nod to the rebirth I intended to undergo after I exposed their affair. During my lunch breaks, I would text my closest friend, Sam, sharing a facade of normalcy. Hey, man. You free this weekend? Thinking of hitting that new steakhouse, I texted him one day. Sure. Need to catch up. How's everything at home? He replied. Good, good. Just busy, you know. Jessica's planning a garden. Typical spring stuff, I replied, deliberately omitting the truth. Sounds nice. You two are due for a little getaway, huh? Yeah, definitely, I said, my mind racing with the plans I had in store for the upcoming weekend getaway. We might take a trip soon. As the week dragged on, I became increasingly aware of how much Jessica relied on my presence to validate her actions. She'd tell me about her day, share little anecdotes, and every so often, her laugh would echo through the apartment, making me feel like I was still living in the blissful bubble we had once shared. Yet, behind her every word was an insidious betrayal that made my blood boil. One evening, I walked into the living room to find her scrolling through her phone. Hey, babe, guess who just messaged me? She beamed, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Who? I asked, feigning interest. Mark. He wants to get together this weekend for a barbecue. Can we invite him over? I froze for a split second. Sure, why not? Sounds like fun, I replied, my heart pounding as I felt the corners of my mind edging closer to insanity. Great. I'll text him, she said, a giddy smile spreading across her face. As she turned her attention back to her phone, I felt an icy calm wash over me. If I was going to execute my plan during our getaway, I needed to keep my enemies close. Actually, I think it's great that you're spending time with him. You two have always hit it off. Jessica beamed, oblivious to the poison lacing my words. I knew you'd understand. I really think we all need a little fun and laughter. Yeah, laughter, I echoed, forcing a laugh that didn't quite reach my eyes. I turned away, fighting the urge to roll them in frustration. All the while, I was counting down the days to the weekend, where everything would be laid bare. As the weekend approached, I felt the thrill of the hunt coursing through me. I became adept at reading Jessica's every move, her insincere smiles no longer disarming me. I would watch her as she texted Mark late at night, my heart racing as I imagined the words they exchanged. On the day of our departure, I threw my bags into the trunk of the car, trying to mask the anger simmering just beneath the surface. Jessica hummed a tune as she secured her seatbelt, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing inside me. Ready for a weekend of fun? She asked, her voice light. Absolutely, I replied, my smile widening. Let's make it one to remember. As we drove toward the cabin, I focused on maintaining the illusion of normalcy. I initiated small talk about our plans, discussing the hiking trails nearby and the meals we would prepare. I didn't want her to sense my tension. But with every mile we traveled, I felt my resolve harden. Little did she know, this weekend wasn't about hiking and barbecuing. It was the stage for the climax of my plans, the moment ere the truth would finally come crashing down. All I needed was the right moment, and I would ensure that Jessica and Mark both understood the price of betrayal. The cabin loomed in the distance, nestled among towering pines and the faint sound of a nearby creek. As we pulled into the gravel driveway, I felt an odd mix of anticipation and dread. This was meant to be a weekend of relaxation and bonding, but it was also a carefully orchestrated trap. The serenity of the setting contrasted sharply with the chaos brewing within me. I could almost hear the clock ticking down to the moment of truth. Jessica leapt out of the car, her excitement palpable. "Isn't this place amazing?" she exclaimed, spinning around to take in the view. The cabin was rustic yet charming, a perfect getaway from the city's hustle. I nodded, forcing a smile, trying to mirror her enthusiasm. "Yeah, it's great. Let's get settled in," I replied, unearthing the bags from the trunk while suppressing the urge to pull her back and confess everything right there. But I needed to stick to the plan. Inside, the cabin smelled of cedar and the faint aroma of pine, instantly grounding me. As Jessica wandered around, admiring the cozy decor, I took a moment to gather my thoughts. She flitted from room to room, excitedly exclaiming over the features she loved. "Look at this fireplace. We should definitely use it tonight," she called from the living room. "Perfect for roasting marshmallows," I replied, keeping my voice light. "I'll get a fire going later." Once we were unpacked, I suggested we explore the surrounding area. I wanted to give Jessica and Mark a chance to engage while I quietly executed the next phase of my plan. "Let's go for a hike before it gets dark," I proposed. "Great idea. Mark should be here soon, right?" she said, her eyes lighting up. I nodded, feigning indifference. "He said around 5. We should have some time to ourselves first." The hike was refreshing, the crisp air invigorating, but my mind was miles away. I calculated each step of the evening ahead while she talked about the flowers she wanted to plant at home and the food she'd prepared for dinner. Her words were a soothing backdrop to my racing thoughts, but I could only focus on one thing: how I would reveal the truth. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, we returned to the cabin. "What do you think, David? Should we get everything ready for dinner?" Jessica asked, peering into the kitchen. "Let's take a moment to relax first," I suggested, pouring a glass of wine for both of us. I handed her a glass and leaned against the kitchen counter, studying her as she took a sip, oblivious to the game I was playing. "I can't believe we're finally here. It feels like it's been ages since we've had a getaway," she said, her tone almost nostalgic. "Yeah, just us," I said, my tone slightly clipped. It's nice to break away from everything for a bit. She smiled and leaned into me, resting her head against my shoulder. You know, I really appreciate this. I feel like we've been so busy with work lately. It's good to reconnect. I took a deep breath, suppressing the urge to pull away. Absolutely. Here's to us, and to new beginnings. I raised my glass, forcing myself to engage in this facade. As the clock ticked closer to 5, I felt my tension build. How about we set up the outdoor area for dinner? The weather is perfect for a barbecue. Great idea. I'll grab the grill, she said, rushing out to the patio. I watched her go, feeling a sense of dread wash over me. Mark's arrival was imminent, and I needed to ensure that everything went according to plan. A few moments later, the doorbell rang, and Jessica rushed to answer it, her face lighting up as she opened the door. Mark. You made it. Wouldn't miss it for the world, he replied, stepping inside with an easy smile, completely unaware of the storm brewing in the background. This place is incredible. You guys really picked a gem. Thanks. We're excited to have you here, I said, extending my hand to Mark, forcing a smile. Let's get the grill going. Jessica and Mark fell into an easy rhythm, joking and laughing as they prepped the food. I stood slightly apart, watching the two of them interact, my stomach churning with anger and hurt. This was the same ease she had shared with me once upon a time. As we lit the grill, I casually interjected, So, Mark, how's work going? Still with that project you were telling me about? Yeah, it's been a crazy week. We just wrapped up a big presentation, and I think it went really well, Mark said, his eyes bright with enthusiasm. Jessica's always been my biggest supporter. Oh, you know I'll always cheer you on, Jessica chimed in, her eyes sparkling. You deserve every bit of success, Mark. I could hardly contain my frustration. I decided it was time to subtly shift the conversation, planting the seeds of doubt in Jessica's mind. It's great to see you both so supportive of each other, I said, my voice dripping with insincerity. A real partnership, of course. Mark replied, flashing a grin. That's what teamwork is all about. I raised an eyebrow, suppressing a smirk. Exactly. Just like how you've teamed up on those late-night projects, right? Jessica's laughter faltered, and she shot me a quick glance. Oh, come on, David, you know how we work late sometimes. Sure, but those late-night projects have to be well-deserved breaks every now and then, I pressed, watching the tension grow. Exactly. Mark added, oblivious to the undercurrents. I mean, who doesn't enjoy a little camaraderie? I felt a wave of satisfaction at the uncomfortable energy in the air, but I knew this was just the beginning. Dinner progressed as we exchanged casual banter, but I could see Jessica becoming increasingly aware of the dynamic in the room. As we settled around the table to eat, I raised my glass. To good friends and good times, I declared, masking my true intentions behind a facade of warmth. To friendship, they echoed, clinking glasses. The meal continued, punctuated by laughter and shared stories. I could see Jessica's confidence waning with every story that slipped through the cracks of our illusion. I was determined to keep it up, knowing that this was all part of the plan, a plan to expose her and Mark's betrayal in front of others, ensuring she would not walk away unscathed. As the night wore on, and the fire crackled warmly outside, I sensed that the moment of revelation was drawing closer. All the pieces were falling into place, and soon, the truth would be unveiled for everyone to see. The air crackled with tension as the night deepened. We had moved outside to the patio, where the moonlight cast an ethereal glow over the forest surrounding us. The sound of the crackling fire filled the silence, a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside me. I had spent the day orchestrating this moment, and now it was time to bring the curtain down. Jessica had poured herself another glass of wine, laughing at something Mark had said. They were too engrossed in each other, and I could feel the frustration bubbling beneath my skin. It was a twisted irony that the woman who had once made me feel like the luckiest man was now the source of my greatest pain. Hey, Jess, I called out, my tone light, almost teasing. Remember that night we got lost hiking and ended up at that secluded spot by the creek? She turned, a smile creeping onto her face. How could I forget? We thought we were going to have to camp out, and then we had that ridiculous argument about whether to follow the river or climb back up, I continued, watching her eyes light up with the memory. You were so convinced you knew the way. Mark laughed, chiming in, sounds like a classic couple's adventure. You should have seen my girlfriend and me trying to navigate the trails last summer. We ended up miles away from where we intended to be. Jessica leaned closer to Mark, her laughter bright, and I felt a surge of anger. Oh, we did the same thing on our trip to Colorado. I told David not to take that detour, but he insisted, because I wanted to surprise you with that stunning view. I interrupted, my voice suddenly firm. And we almost didn't make it back before dark. The laughter faded slightly, replaced by a more serious atmosphere. Well, at least you guys made it back. That's what counts, Mark said, trying to lighten the mood again. But I could see that Jessica was starting to sense something was off. David, what's with the trip down memory lane? Jessica asked, her brow furrowing in concern. You're not usually this nostalgic. Just reminiscing, Jess, I replied, my smile not reaching my eyes. But it's funny how those memories can stir up emotions, isn't it? I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of what I was about to do. Especially when you realize how those memories can be overshadowed by more current events. Jessica's expression shifted from confusion to alarm. What do you mean? She asked, glancing nervously at Mark, who looked equally puzzled. Current events, like how some people can betray the trust of those who love them, I said slowly, letting my words sink in. Like how you've been spending your late nights, Jess. Mark shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting between us. David, what are you talking about? Oh, you know, just how easy it is to get lost in the woods, and in relationships, I continued, feeling a sense of clarity wash over me. Especially when you think no one is watching. Jessica's face went pale, realization dawning on her. David, what are you saying? Her voice trembled slightly. It's really quite simple, I said, feeling a sense of power surge through me. I came home early from my trip, Jess. And what I found was rather enlightening. I paused for effect, my gaze locking onto hers. You and Mark, in our bed, sharing more than just a good time. David, please, she started, her voice rising in panic. I can explain. Explain what? That you've been cheating on me? I interrupted, feeling the heat of betrayal fueling my anger. Or that I'm the fool you thought I was, living in blissful ignorance while you plotted behind my back. Mark's face went from confusion to guilt in a heartbeat. I had no idea, he stammered, backing away slightly. Jessica, is this true? It's not what you think, she shouted, desperation lacing her voice. I didn't mean for it to happen. I love you, David. I swear. I laughed, but it was devoid of humor. You love me. That's rich, coming from the woman who decided that our marriage wasn't worth keeping. Did you think I wouldn't find out? Did you think I wouldn't care? Jessica's eyes were wide, her heart pounding. I made a mistake. I didn't mean to hurt you. Mark didn't mean anything. Then why did you let him into our home? Why did you let him into our bed? I shot back, my heart racing. You could have put a stop to this at any moment. But you didn't. Mark shifted uncomfortably, looking between us as if he was trying to figure out how to escape the situation. I should go, he said, taking a step back. I didn't know. Not so fast, Mark, I said, my voice low and firm. You're part of this too. You don't get to slink away. You were complicit in this betrayal. Jessica looked frantic. Please, David, don't do this here. We can talk about this, work it out. Oh, we will talk, I said, my heart pounding with a mixture of anger and adrenaline. But first, let's make sure everyone knows the truth about your little adventure. David, no, she began, but I cut her off. Remember how you said you wanted to reconnect? I asked, my voice steady and controlled. Well, how about we reconnect with the truth? I'll make sure our friends know exactly what kind of marriage we had, and how you've treated it. David, please, she pleaded, tears forming in her eyes. I'll do anything. Just don't do this. Too late for that, Jess. You made your choices, and now you'll face the consequences, I said, feeling a sense of resolve wash over me. You wanted freedom, and now you'll get it, just not in the way you imagined. As I turned to Mark, I could see the fear in his eyes. You should leave, I said coldly. Before this gets worse. Mark hesitated, glancing at Jessica as if seeking her approval, but she was too wrapped up in her desperation to respond. I think I should go, he muttered, backing away. I didn't sign up for this. Good choice, I said, my voice dripping with disdain. Get out. As he turned to leave, Jessica's voice broke through the tension. Please, don't go. Mark, I'm so sorry. But Mark was already gone, leaving me alone with Jessica and the echo of the betrayal that hung heavily in the air. I could feel the adrenaline coursing through me as I stared at her, my heart pounding. This is just the beginning, I said, my voice steady. I'll make sure everyone knows the truth. And you will regret what you've done. Her eyes widened with fear and realization, and in that moment, I felt a sense of empowerment wash over me. I had been the oblivious husband, but now I was the man who would reclaim his life. The facade had crumbled, and with it, the illusion of our marriage. As she stood there, frozen in shock, I knew I was ready to embrace the new path ahead of me, one where I wouldn't be a victim but a man who would not let himself be manipulated again.